update. And then we'll have David Sollers, Dean of our School of Business. He's also on the Zoom this morning. You know, we co-sponsor the Wake Up with Washburn Breakfast Lecture Series with the School of Business, a partnership between the Alumni Association and the School of Business. So then David will give an update, and then I'll introduce Luke at the conclusion of that. So Dr. Farley, go ahead and visit for a little bit.
I will, thank you. And hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well and you have successfully avoided the coronavirus we have here on campus. In fact, this last, we measure the total positives that we get from students. Some students don't tell us about it. They live off campus, they don't tell us, but some do. And we've been running somewhere around, 8-10 positive cases over a couple of week period. But this last week, we had one, which is remarkable. I'm hoping for 0 this week, and actually by 5 o'clock tonight, I should know whether that's the case or not. But we've taken very aggressive positions. We don't have large gatherings on campus, and that's a shame because students can't do the kinds of things that they really want to do. Faculty can't do the things that they want to do with student groups outside the classroom. Athletics has been pretty good, actually. We've had a lot of athletic programs where there was large crowds, but we were able to distance them between one another. Anything that's outdoors, we have a lot easier time of it. We've got a new, just a beautiful, if you haven't seen a beautiful softball field now that we finished up this, I actually finished it up this year. The baseball field even looks really great now. We lost all of our grass down there a year or so ago, and it looked really bad. But now it's just beautiful. The grass looks better than the turf does. So we've had good luck. We've opened the indoor athletic facility. We've had over 3,000 students, athletes from all over the country. Some high schools, mostly though Division II. Schools around the area, and we've had great success with our athletic programs. We have probably 7-8 programs that are in the top 20 in the country. So they're rebounding. We took football team, travel team over to Colorado School of Mines, and had a scrimmage with them. Not a game. We didn't keep score. But I can tell you how many touchdowns we had, and they didn't even come close. And we've been able to squeeze in several different events on campus that students will participate in. The ones that I feel the most regret for is music and performance majors. It's just been very difficult to make that program work out because just the way they do them and the way the instruments work. But the news that I can pass on to you, I think I did this last time we met as well, is that our anticipation is that we will be in person this fall. We'll start on the traditional time that we always have. We have a calendar that we follow pretty close every year. So we will start in face-to-face, and we hope that we will end the semester at the normal time before Christmas doing face-to-face. Right now, we're going to just share with you a couple of things that are happening. I spoke yesterday to the general faculty on campus and brought them up to date on some things. Right now, the legislature is away on their first break. They haven't done some of the real heavy lifting yet. Primarily will be budget, and we are hopeful that the consensus estimating group, that's a group of economists that look at all of the revenue sources that the state has and makes a prediction of how much will be available for the next legislative year coming up July 1 this year. I've been anticipating that it'll be a good year this year. I don't know if we'll spend it all. We'll get a fair share of it, but it will be a good year, primarily because of the federal funding, the CARES Act. And sure enough, when the consensus group met late last week, it looks like they raised their estimate of the projection of the budget revenue for next year by $319,000. That's a lot of money in Kansas. And the problem with it, and what I have also been saying is, it's not this year I'm worried about, it's next year that I'm worried, a year from this July, that I'm worrying about. And sure enough, they reduced their projected revenues in the next fiscal year. And we came up with a deficit of $119,000. And so that'll create a problem for us. But even it does this year as well, because when we have that much money in cash, the legislature has a tendency to budget how much cash they have, not how much revenue will be there this year and will recur next year. Really difficult to explain faculty and staff that, we gave you a salary increase this year, which we haven't, by the way, but we gave you a salary increase this year, but we had to take part of it back next year. That just doesn't work. The other notable thing that the legislature has done, they've passed it, it's on the governor's desk, and that is that they have reduced the age limit for concealed carry that would apply to us to 18 years. Well, when it was 21 years, we could pretty much assure we didn't have anyone living in the residential housing on campus, because they were all below 21 for the most part. But now at 18, we're going to have a lot of people living on campus that would qualify for concealed carry. And they don't have to tell us. We can't quiz them of whether they're what they're going to do. I'm concerned about, you can't assign people roommates based upon the fact that they may be carrying a concealed weapon. I don't know how they're going to conceal it when they go to the shower in their residence halls, but we'll have to work our way through that one, and that'll be a bit of a problem. Finally, the real great news that share with you is that on May 1, it's a Saturday, 3 in the afternoon, we will hold an outdoor commencement ceremony. We have to go to the football stadium, and then we have to parcel out tickets for family and friends to come see their student graduate. And the one on May 1 is the graduates from 2020, which we couldn't have last year. And then the following week on the 8th, we'll do the same thing for the graduates this year. And it isn't the same kind of ceremony. It doesn't have all the pomp and circumstance that the normal ceremony would have. We don't have all the people that we would normally have, but it is our gesture, and we want to make certain that the students understand that we really understand their dilemma here. They've come here and they've been several semesters with us, and we don't get to go through a traditional kind of graduation, but we will have all of them walking across the stage in the football stadium, and then they will have themselves up on the big board, up on the big video board, as they walk across the stage and pause for a shot of them graduating and getting their diploma cover. So we're excited about that. The law school will be the following weekend, and it will be more like the traditional graduation. And we just won't have quite as many family and friends there with the law school because of the limitation on how many we can have in any close proximity. So that's probably more you wanted to hear this morning, Susie. Sorry to go on so long. It's sure good to see you. We appreciate your support. The alumni of Washburn have been there for Washburn from the very beginning, and you carry on that great tradition. It's fun to see you, and like Susie says, we're looking forward to be back out, and our first one back in person in February of 2022 and be in Phoenix and Tucson. So thanks, folks. Live long and prosper, as they say.
Thanks, Dr. Farley. David, do you want to say a few words about what's going on at the School of Business?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's been an interesting year. I'll say that, or even a year and a half. And I'm in the process of doing faculty evaluations. The faculty always love those, but what's amazing to me is how much effort and time that the faculty had to put in this year to teaching courses, sometimes in 2 or 3 different ways. The same course, and because they were trying to serve students that were on campus, students that weren't on campus, students that we had one class where we had students from Japan, Brazil, and another country, maybe in Europe. And so that was an interesting situation. So, but we're trying to continue doing what we can do, and often in a virtual fashion. This year we decided not to have our annual scholarship luncheon simply because, number one, we couldn't get a room, and 2, it fills up the room when we do it. So that wasn't going to work. So, but we are on Friday the 29th, we're still going to do our Beta Gamma Sigma and Beta Alpha Psi Honor Society inductions. Our speaker will be Brad Martin. I know some of you might remember Brad. And we will also give out our Dicus Award for Teaching Excellence, thanks to the generosity of Jack and the late Betty Dicus, and our Call Valley Bank Research Award. So we're trying to continue on doing some things that we would normally do this time of year, but it's been harder. I think it's fitting this morning that our speaker is a true entrepreneur. We a few years ago started our concentration in entrepreneurship. Dr. David Price and our entrepreneurship evangelist Rick Lejeune have really headed that program for us. I see that Susie Pryor is on before Susie left us to go to California all those years ago. She's back now, by the way, in this neck of the woods. We thought we could do a lot of great things with entrepreneurship. And of course, we do events where we have pillars of what we do outside of the classroom. In the fall, we do a pitch competition that's sponsored by the Greater Topeka Partnership, where students compete for prize money totaling about $25,000. And we get very good participation for some reason. Maybe it's the $25,000. We do a business plan competition in the spring. We completed that last month. And again, some prize money was available thanks to many of our donors, some of who are on this call. So we're very pleased by that. And tomorrow we have what's called the Student Business Accelerator Fund presentations, where students will compete and try to convince some judges, mostly our alumni, that they're worthy of some grant money. That's, again, provided by one of our donors. And so we're very, Mark Beffert down in Oklahoma City. So we're very pleased by that, and that'll happen tomorrow. I can also report, not only do we do things here in Kansas, we have our students every year compete in the Network of Independent Schools of Business business plan competition, and that's schools from the United States and also schools from Europe and maybe a couple other places. And our students have once again made the finals. I think it's the final 4, maybe the final 6 or something like that, but they will make their final presentations to compete in the finals sometime either later this month or the first of next month. I don't quite remember, but we're very pleased. We've won that before. We've placed high each year, so we're very pleased by that. And I should also just tell you, not only do we do things with our students, but we're trying to figure out ways to always make connections with what's going on in our community. Some of you know about the Momentum 2022 process here in Topeka, where we're trying to figure out how to create economic vitality in Topeka. I know I and Rick and Carl Klein, who directs our SBDC, are on an entrepreneurship committee where we're going to try to figure out how to get grade school kids and high school kids more interested in entrepreneurship. And of course, I'm hoping that they do. And then they say, where's the best school to go to learn more about entrepreneurship? And I can say, oh, I know a place. So we're hoping that will work. So we're gonna, we're exploring ways to work with the Plug and Play initiative that some of you know about, the Innovation Center that'll be coming online sometime in the next year. And so we're excited by that. again, it's all about trying to create or help create the economic vitality in our region that will really drive economic growth into the future. So I'm pleased by what we've been able to accomplish this year with Troubled Times, and I'm certainly looking forward to today's talk. So thanks, Susie.
Thank you, David. Well, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Luke Einsel. And Luke is from Greensburg, Kansas, came to Washburn and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in English in 2012. And as a student, he was president of Sigma Tau Delta English Honor Society and editor-in-chief of Inkscape, a national literary journal. In 2016, he completed SBA's Scale Up Kansas City program, which was developed by the Harvard Business School, and Luke serves as an ambassador for the program. In May 2011, Luke launched his business, Thirsty Coconut, distributing frozen drink products to commercial accounts in the Midwest, taking advantage of the Healthy Hungry Kids Act of 2010 to help feed kids grades K through 12. The company also developed programs to better its community by inventing custom parts built in prison programs that certify inmates in blue-collar skills, work with college students to develop business skills, and work on custom projects and train unskilled workers to thrive in its company. Thirsty Coconut rebranded and became Smart Beverage Incorporated in May 2018, and Luke serves as CEO. His proudest accomplishment is launching a business straight out of college. His last semester at Washburn, he was enrolled in 23 credit hours. 2 weeks after graduation, he opened his business and has been working it for 9 years. Luke has been described as an inspiring entrepreneur who continuously finds new and enlightening ways to innovate and adapt, committed to making their corner of the world a better place. A milestone in Luke's career was when he liquidated all the beverage equipment from 3,200 7-Eleven convenience stores throughout Mexico, overcoming the logistical challenges in financing this multi-million-dollar project and securing rail transportation crossing international borders. In 2019, Smart Beverage was honored as one of Thinking Bigger's 25 under 25, which recognizes the top 25 companies in Kansas City with under 25 employees. Luke and his wife, Catherine, live in Olathe, Kansas, and have 2 children. In his spare time, he enjoys being a drone operator and business consultant. He is a frequent public speaker in the Kansas City community, lecturing about entrepreneurship. And a professor characterizes Luke as an entrepreneur, original thinker, dependable, passionate and compassionate, charming and colorful, frank, candid and honest, in charge of who he is, but not self-centered, a good listener, and an even better storyteller. Today, Luke will share his stories about hidden values he garnered from various Washburn courses and how it helped build a successful business. Please welcome Luke Einsel. Luke?
Okay. Wow, Susie, that was pretty impressive. I've never heard that many good things at one time. And it's great to see everybody here. I see a lot of faces I haven't seen in a while, and I'm sure you noticed the gray hair that's coming in. It's been a while for some of you, but really, really great to have this opportunity. Susie's covered a lot of the basics. You know, I went back to Washburn right about when the recession was kicking into full swing, and things were very uncertain. There was a lot of fear, and I thought, what a perfect time to go and finish my degree at Washburn. And I initially didn't know what I wanted to choose, but I settled on English because it was what I was passionate about. And I really didn't have any intention of maybe using that degree to secure employment at the time, but it was a great journey. And I want to kind of walk through, you know, some of the things that I developed that I think are paramount skills that are really overlooked with humanities in general. And, you know, some of the tools that I picked up, like critical thinking, analytical reasoning, preparing me for the massive amount of paperwork that I would have to deal with on a daily basis. You know, some of those essays look like pretty watered down amount of work when you're dealing with a multi-100-page RFP from a government institution. And also, you know, being able to be exposed to many of the different concepts. You know, growing up in a small rural town in Western Kansas, you knew what you saw. It was the early days of the internet, and there wasn't as much sharing of information as there is now. And so, you know, to get exposed to different cultures, I specifically remember Mary Sheldon's class, you know, talking about different cultures, studying Russian culture, literature, studying Japanese culture and literature. It was so important to be able to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, understand their viewpoints, and how that's translated over for me is that when I walk into a contract negotiation, or we're wanting to, you know, do some sort of deal, it's often much easier because when you do your research on somebody and try to understand their motivations, when you can look and see maybe what their problems are and how you can help solve those problems, it makes a partnership very easy to develop and a lasting partnership because you understand their motivations and you can set everything up right at the very beginning, and there isn't this back and forth of trying to renegotiate a contract. So I would say that the English department very much prepared me for a life of entrepreneurship because there were so many high-level concepts that pushed me. I remember Corey Zeistra's class where we had metaphysical poetry, and you would maybe think like, how would that ever relate to business? But it was so challenging to try and understand these brand new concepts when I was a student, and it really put you know, many of these classes pushed me to develop as a citizen. And I'm very, very thankful I took that. I kind of wish I would have taken some more entry-level business classes at the time, but you know, it is what it is. I do remember my senior year was an extremely busy senior year, and you know, I kind of want to walk through 5 of the people that really had an amazing impact on me. First of all, Tom Averill, who I saw here, was my advisor when I was at Washburn. Him and Sarah Smarsh shared an office my senior year up in the tower, which is unfortunately gone now. I really appreciated that place when it was there. But you know, one of the big takeaways that I took from them was how powerful a letter can be. And in particular, I do remember Sarah Smarsh talking about when she was wanting to get an apartment in New York. Everybody was fighting over this apartment. She wrote a really personalized letter to the person that was leasing out this apartment, and they ended up choosing her, even though she didn't have the best offer. And it came down to the humanity of, you know, we're all human, and if you can touch somebody through a letter, how powerful is that? And I've used that throughout my career. I used that to win several of the awards that we've won by having tremendous support. There's many of you that I've probably asked to write letters of recommendation. It's pretty hard to get turned down when you've got 50 letters of recommendation in a pile with your application. It definitely gets you noticed. So I would say that to anybody. If you really want something, get as much support from the community as you can. I mean, it really is overwhelming. And how powerful a letter can be to a legislator or a congressman they read it. You know, it's a physical thing that comes in. You know, the excitement of getting something in your mailbox now. It's very personable, much different than an email. You know, kind of in my journey, which got me interested in entrepreneurship, was Professor David Weed. He had a class, and I can't remember the name exactly, but it was criticism. And I vividly remember studying colonialism in Africa. And that's what got me interested in entrepreneurship, because I said, as terrible as this was, how interesting the structures and systems people put in place. And it really intellectually stimulated me. And David was an incredible teacher. Many of the students were not happy with the pace of the homework assigned or the difficulty of it, but I really appreciated it. And I'm sure many of you would maybe remember me. I was always the devil's advocate. I typically sat in the front. I was very engaged. And so, you know, there were other professors that I had, specifically Mike Russell in the psychology department. And I told Mike, hey, there's this WTE program. Do you think that I could use it to start a business? And he said, yes, you can. And you need to talk to Susie Pryor. And introduced me to Susie Pryor. And Susie, out of the goodness of her heart, I'd never been a student of hers, took me under her wing and said, oh, you want to start a business? And we became very close friends fast. And she walked me through things that I had never even thought about doing. I had a spreadsheet, a financial forecast pro forma that she helped me develop. We went and competed in some business plan competitions and made it into the top 16 on one of them. And it was rough. I mean, looking back, they were very rough, but what a great exercise in learning. And, you know, I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am if it wasn't for some of the generosity of the time. You know, Susie had, I'm not a student. She's not obligated to help me. She did it because I was passionate about something and she wanted to pour water on this little seed and see it grow. And absolutely will always cherish that. I'm going to tell you another fun story. Paul Preche was in the theater department. And I think I might have been able to get a minor in theater, as many classes I took over there, because they overlap with English so much. And one of my favorite memories from Paul that prepared me for business was I emailed Paul one class asking for some clarification, and he called me into his office. And I go in, and he had printed out my email, and he had graded it. And there's circles on it and red marks. And he went, look, if you're going to make it through life, you've got to be able to write a proper email. And took me to task. And I'm going to tell you, like, never had a complaint about an email since. It was amazing, the extra effort that some of the professors put into, you know, it was short-term pain for a lot of long-term gain. But I'll definitely never forget having an email graded that wasn't even related to any coursework. And I'll kind of end on one more favorite story of why you should be a lifelong learner, why you should be engaged with the classes that you're taking or anything that you're doing. And that was an obscure class taught by Barry Crawford, which I think was Intro to Religions. It was something along those lines. And Barry, that created a very interesting classroom. And as usual, I was the devil's advocate whenever he wanted something to argue, because I liked arguing. And going through this class, I really enjoyed it because it was a different way of looking at the Bible, you know, studying it analytically. And I was out at Bullfrogs Live one night, and, you know, having a beer. One of my friends was a bartender there, and walks up to me, this tall blonde girl. She starts talking to me. I ask her, you know, what she does, where she's from. She had just graduated from Florida State with a master's in ancient Judaism and ancient religions. And she starts talking to me, and the class that she's teaching is a class that I'm taking with Barry Crawford, which I'm very well versed in. And so I start talking to her, and she's like, "Wow, you actually know a lot about this. I'm really impressed." And that woman ended up becoming my wife because I paid attention in Barry Crawford's class. I had something smooth to say to a pretty girl who came up to me with, you know, imagine if I would have slacked off in that class. I may not have the two beautiful children I have. So it's great experience. Very, very thankful that I went to Washburn.
We need to, of course, we're recording this Zoom because we'll post it out on our YouTube channel. But this would be a very good maybe class presentation for some of our professors on campus to show this in a class, because what you've covered today, Luke, I mean, would benefit, I mean, all of our students. I love, in fact, I made a note of it here: the short-term pain for long-term gain. Put that on a T-shirt. That's good advice for sure. We've got a lot of people that have zoomed in today. Surely someone has a question for Luke, maybe more specifically about his business. I covered some of that in the introduction, but he didn't touch on that quite as much today. But somebody out there probably has some questions about that. So unmute yourself if you have a question, and please speak up.
Well, maybe Luke can tell us just a little bit more about his business, because it's a phenomenal business.
Yeah, so I did spend some time in the restaurant industry, and I think with a good starting place with any business, it is, where's the pain? You know, oftentimes I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that try to focus on a feature, you know, something that.
There's going to be a little noise passing by us here.
Yep, give me one moment.
Okay, we're good.
I think the best place to think about entrepreneurship is, how do I solve somebody's pain? That creates lasting, enduring businesses that people that are sticky. And in the restaurant industry specifically, what I saw was that a lot of the major beverage companies were doing a terrible job with customer service. Your beverage equipment broke down. It would take them 2 to 3 weeks to get to repair it. There wasn't a lot of options in the field. Coke, Pepsi, you know, most of the big players out there. And I saw an opportunity saying, like, there's a major customer service gap, and the products available are really lacking. So here's an opportunity for me to get in and solve a problem for potentially thousands of, you know, restaurants, bars. And what that transformed into was the school nutrition program. I found an opportunity to serve a healthier beverage because Coke and Pepsi had been removed from most of the schools in the country. And through a 100% fruit juice as a slush, a frozen beverage, we could set up B2B operations with any school district and train them on best, you know, uses, practices, really think through this program, and then when they had problems, be extremely responsive on the customer service side. And when we pivoted in 2014, ran a pilot with 4 school districts in Kansas, that quickly became a 4-state distribution area in 2016. We continue to expand. At this moment, we cover 22 states in the United States through 5 major distribution hubs in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Houston, Kansas City, and Alabama. And you know, we want to work with, we work with over 1,000 schools in the country. We're constantly winning more bids because there really are 2 companies that do what we do, and it's been an incredible fast ride, burning the candle at both ends.
I have a question.
Yes,
Could
Jeannie.
you tell us a little bit about how your business, I know, was dramatically impacted by the pandemic, and you know, we're kind of coming out of it and schools are back in session, but that must have been really a lot to handle. So I'm curious, you know, how you survived or got through all of that,
Yeah,
or
the
getting through that.
pandemic impacted. I thought I was in a recession-proof business, but I didn't take into account pandemics. It really impacted us. We had, one of our biggest issues is fundamentally how society changed when the pandemic hit. You know, we don't want people in close proximity to each other, and that fundamentally changed feeding operations within schools. A lot of the feeding became things that they could put in a sack lunch. What that did was dramatically increase the cost of all the goods sold, because now you have to have individual packaging, wrapping on each item. They have to, you know, be shelf stable or somewhat that, you know, they can set out before they're being handed to the kids. And that dramatically increased the costs of almost every school lunchroom program across the country, but it also it stopped some of our programs from being so effective. So how I'm looking at it is essentially from March, mid-March of last year till about August, you know, about a year and a half, it severely impacted us, but we're going to survive. And many of our competitors did not survive through this pandemic. So it's been an incredible challenge to navigate that. But we're still here and kicking.
I have another question.
Okay.
Yep, go for it, Jeannie.
I heard you sent your brother to jail.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story. So some of our program, how we look at things, I went to like, what are some people's program problems? And I had worked with Kansas Department of Corrections, their industries unit. And it just happened to be, I was just randomly talking to somebody at a state bid conference, and he happened to be the person in charge of this. And he said, you know, he wasn't very interested in me selling products into the prisons, but he said, you know, is there anything that we can make for you? And I said, hey, I've got this prototype safety device I'd like to develop, but I can't find any metal manufacturers that want to work with me. He said, let us take it on. So he helped me prototype this safety component, designed it in CAD. They were able to manufacture a large scale run, and it really opened the doors for us because we could completely secure our machines. There wasn't any fear of tampering with the equipment. And so after we did this 7-Eleven of Mexico deal, where we had liquidated about 3,600 pieces of beverage equipment from Mexico, shipped it to Kansas City, where we had moved to a what used to be Richard Gebaur's Air Force Base. We took over a former munitions depot on that base. I went back to the prison and said, hey, how would you guys like to help us refurbish equipment and maybe put a job skills training program in for some of your inmates? And they were absolutely engaged with that and said, let's figure out a way to do this. So I sent my brother to prison to teach inmates how to refurbish beverage equipment. We installed a foreman. We had upwards of 20 inmates working on beverage equipment where they were getting paid federal minimum wage, and they were getting develop with HVAC skills so that when they get released, they've got a clear path to, being able to provide for themselves in a very high in demand field that is lacking in a lot of candidates. So I thought of a way to solve one of my problems, solve theirs, and do a good for society at the same time.
I have a question, Luke, that may be related to that. You grew up in Greensburg, went to Washburn, you're in Kansas City, so you've stayed pretty close to home and been successful in working with like Kansas Department of Corrections and so on. What is it about Kansas, or why are you still here?
Well, that's a great question, Tom. There are a lot of benefits to living in this state, and specifically in the Midwest. One of them is the cost of living. I'm sure, I travel a lot. I'm sure everybody's heard about how expensive California is, and really don't know. It is crazy expensive. I wouldn't have been able to take some of the risks that I took in the state, in a state like California or New York, without raising significant investment. And I really think that that gives entrepreneurs an advantage, because I'll share another story. When I bought my first house in Kansas City, when real estate prices were really depressed, I put a $10,000 down payment on a house that was in a nice part of Olathe, because housing prices were so depressed. And it allowed, when I think about things, you've got a personal cash flow and you've got a global cash flow for your company. The more that you need to take out of a business on your personal side cash flow, it puts more pressure on the business. And so by being able to live really lean and frugal in Kansas allows me to take incredible risks that other people would have to raise significant money to, because I'm not putting that much of a burden on my company.
Yeah.
And the people are great. That's always a bonus too.
Thanks.
Yeah, Luke, I'll ask a question. Susie mentioned in her introduction your project in Mexico and with 7-Eleven. I just want to hear a little bit more about that and how that came to be, and how you pulled it off.
Yeah, so that kind of goes into one of our fundamental business segments, which is we buy and resale a lot of secondhand equipment. Restaurant equipment is pennies on the dollar, typically. And we had been liquidating a lot of equipment out of Oregon at the time for a large coffee chain. And we had bought all their inventory out. They didn't have anything else to sell. And so we started looking for more equipment to find. And we were contacted by a broker for 7-Eleven International saying, hey, we have an issue that I can't go into for too much detail, but they had to get rid of this equipment quick. And they had to get rid of all of it because it wasn't conforming with the standards of what their expectations were for the brand. And so in a fire sale, environment like that, I had a lot of leverage, because I could go to 7-Eleven International and say, look, I'm going to make this really easy for you, because I know what's going to happen if you can't find one buyer for this. You're going to spend years trying to, piece this out little by little, and it's going to be a huge time suck. You're not going to be able to focus. What if I make you an offer that's good enough that I can take all of these, get them off your hand for one transaction, and everybody walks away happy. And they, after months of negotiation, we came to really reasonable terms. We had to go in, centralize all this beverage equipment. As you can imagine, 3,200 convenience stores is not a small task. But we centralized all the equipment in Monterrey, Mexico. I got to rent an entire train for the first time, which was fun, to ship everything. And you know, some of the pain, you always remember the pain more than anything else, but that was right as the government had shut down in, I believe that was 2018 in December. So we had stuff hung up on the border, stuck in customs, getting charged daily for it. And eventually it got released. And it's been a tremendous program because it gave us more beverage equipment, more frozen beverage equipment than I think than anybody in North America had at that time, just sitting in inventory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Luke, could I ask you a question about being adaptive? I remember when you were still at Washburn, you describing thirsty coconut to me for the first time. And this was maybe sort of the prototype that you were developing through the WTE. But as I recall, it was going to be, a business that rented margarita machines to people who were throwing parties, or something like that. So a very sort of small scale version of what we're looking at now. And when I think about entrepreneurship, which is something about which I know almost nothing, I guess I think about having a plan, some of the concepts you talked about already, sort of foreseeing what's going to happen, knowing how things are going to play out. But when I look at sort of the trajectory of your career, what's striking to me is how adaptive you've been. It seems like how much improvising and recognizing new opportunities and shifting the plan when the need seems to shift, or when you've anticipated something that's different than how things have actually shaken out. Could you talk a little bit about that, about sort of flexibility and the ability to depart from a plan when the circumstances require it?
That's great, Eric, and I'm glad you remember that. That's amazing. So yeah, when we first started this, what do you have at the time? Well, I didn't have a lot of capital, but I had labor, free labor myself. So the concept was early to get some traction was we did rent these machines to parties, to corporations. Some of the early things that we got to do, we did Microsoft's grand opening of their Microsoft store in Oak Park Mall. We did a Blake Shelton concert. We did training camp for the Kansas City Chiefs when it was Andy Reid's first year. Andy Reid actually gave me a hug, believe it or not, because they were having problems, and at last minute notice, I drove up to St. Joe to training camp, fixed their problems, and he was very happy. Because they had a frozen beverage program to keep their offensive linemen cool. Their body temperature would get, really, really hot quickly, and this was a way for them to combat that. So we did the rental concept for a good 3 years. And what I found was it wasn't a very scalable business. There were 2 other rental companies when we had started in Kansas City. And we ended up buying both of those rental companies, consolidating it into one company. And we had the lion's share of the rental business in Kansas City, and did political events. I mean, you can just imagine like all the people that we met in Kansas City. But the problem is by developing a more B2B business model, you're working Monday through Friday. And on most of the rental stuff is on the weekends. So you end up working 7 days a week, and you're just frayed at both ends. Your wife's like, why don't I ever see you? You kind of have to make a choice. And we sold the rental company a couple of years ago to somebody who had the time and passion to do that. But I think innovation comes down to necessity. You start feeling the pain somewhere, and you've got to pivot, because if you don't, the pain is going to get worse. But it was a great experience, and that's part of why we rebranded, is that we had such a strong brand connection with the rental and party services in Kansas City that it was hard to disconnect. Once a consumer has this brand cemented in their mind, it was really hard to disengage from that, to say, oh, you're a B2B wholesale company now.
Luke, when you and I had a chance to chat several years ago now, it doesn't seem like it could be that long, but probably kind of 2 or 3 years ago, I was impressed with what you told me then, and you referred to something like that now. There's a lot of personal sacrifice that you had to make the business go, and your family had to forego what some people would think were essential. But you and your family were willing to sacrifice to make all of this happen. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've got to give my wife a lot of credit because she's still with me after 10 years. Um, it one of the ways that I grew my company early, like I said, I didn't have a lot of startup capital at the beginning. So what I did was I didn't pay myself for several years, and my wife supported me. Worked a salary job, had insurance benefits, and allowed me to take a lot of the risks that I did without a lot of income. And I said, like, look, we're young. Let's sacrifice in the short term for a much bigger long-term reward down the road. And you got to be really dedicated to, work years without paying yourself to develop something. And you also have to have a very strong commitment, communication, between your partner, so that you're on the same board, because you see your friends, moving into the new big house in Overland Park and matching Audis in the driveway, and you're saying, why couldn't this be me? And, very, very committed to the mission and vision of what we want to develop. And I want to build a big company that has a very recognizable brand nationally. And you can't have everything you want. You have to pick and choose. And ultimately, here are my priorities. So I'm going to focus on my priorities, and eventually it'll change. There'll be a transition.
I hope that you've made some concessions since the last time we talked.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, things have improved very well. And part of it also came down to the nature of, there were 3 years in a row where our revenue had tripled year over year. And with that kind of growth, you've got to figure out how to keep the train on the tracks so it doesn't fly off and just crash. So we were very, very lean trying to manage the tremendous growth that we had.
Other questions for Luke?
I'll ask another question. I am curious. I know one time we talked about where you get some of your supply for your product, and you were telling me a little bit about hunger issues and food, and I know you have some feelings about that. I'd like to hear your thoughts about that, and also how you tie that into where you resource things.
Yeah, so food deserts are a real issue, and a majority of our best customers are actually rural school districts. And one of the reasons, their engagement is incredible. If you bring something to a rural school district, they're going to use it because they don't have a lot of options. They're overlooked by a lot of the biggest food service companies. They don't get what a Blue Valley or an Olathe would get. And because of that, we've really found that not only that, but the urban core, we've had a lot of success of how do we get nutritious products to these school districts to help solve some of these issues so that kids don't go to class hungry, that they can focus. And how do we get things to kids that they actually want to consume? It doesn't matter if you put something in front of them if they're not going to eat it. And I've got one of the pickiest sons in the world, so I live that struggle daily. So you've got to be deceptive sometimes about what you do, and We've developed a product that is a half fruit, half yogurt with granola that are served at breakfast. It's a parfait. Comes out of our machine, makes it really, really easy for the schools to serve, and it makes it, it's something that's very, it's not wasted very often by the kids.
Other
Hey, Luke,
questions?
hey, Luke, this is Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Kevin Watt. Hey. So one of the things that's kind of interesting, I've known you for some time, and you've gone from being really kind of a single owner, doing everything, to really having to adopt a lot of leadership skills in a multi-state distribution system. Give us a little bit about that and anything that either surprised you or how you've had to really change to out of being more operator to more leader around your business.
Yeah, that's an incredible transition going from, you know, running a small business where it's essentially a dictatorship. You're involved in everything. Those people typically have a tendency to micromanage tasks. You can't scale an operation like that. I mean, it's not possible. If you have that mindset and you want to micromanage, you're going to burn yourself to the core, and you just can't scale. So you really have to get in a mindset of identifying talent and people that you can trust to manage, you know, segments of an organization. And I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want the people that are around me to be the smartest people in a room. And you, Kevin, you definitely have helped mold me in some of those aspects. But you know, you find people, you try to identify what their strong competencies are, and put them in a chance to succeed. It reminds me of the saying, "Don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree." You're always going to be disappointed. So, you know, find people that are really good at what they do, put them in their role, allow them to succeed. And I would also say this, never trust somebody with something that you're not willing to lose. So limit what people have access to, especially if they're early in an organization. You know, we call it a trust ladder. You know, the longer you're there, the more you show you're trustworthy, the more responsibilities and access you have into our organization. And I've gotten very lucky to have some of the employees we do. I want to tell you that there's probably 5 of our employees that are nearing 60, maybe over 60. And they are some of my favorite people to work with. I don't have to train them. They've been trained by corporations for 30 plus years. There's never a work ethic issue. Very, very structured. And I like working with adults. That's one thing I'm going to say is like working in retail or something else. It can be really challenging to work with 18 to 22-year-olds that are trying to figure things out. Life is hard, but when you've got a really seasoned, you know, person in your organization, it's just a nicer flow to life. But Kevin, to answer that question a little bit more, some of the programs that I went through, Scale Up, which is an entrepreneurship program that's paid for by the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. It was developed by Harvard Business School. That was my real first taste of maybe like an MBA. And it really helped accelerate our growth back in 2016 because it helped me change my mindset of how I thought, how I needed to build an organization. And it allowed us to scale tremendously.
Any other questions before we wrap things up today? Well, again, I want to thank Luke for sharing his story with us, and appreciate all of you who zoomed in today to listen to his story and ask questions. I'd like to mention just a couple of things before we finish. Some of you out there who are dues paid members of the Alumni Association may have received an email from us about our new Washburn app that you can download for your phone. One of the coolest features is the electronic membership card right on the app. Among other things, information about our events, travel, news, and everything. So if you haven't had a chance, download the Washburn app for your phone. Also, after hours. You know, we haven't had an after hours since a year ago in February, and we are scheduling our very first after hours in hopes that we can pull this off on Friday, June 25th. We're moving after hours to the fourth Friday of the month. We've discovered that there's now a conflict here locally on the second Friday of the month, so we're moving to the fourth Friday of the month for after hours. We're going to kind of ease back into it. We're going to host the first one outdoors here at the Alumni Center in our lovely garden on the west side of the building. So stay tuned for more information about after hours, but we're really feeling that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're eager to get back to in-person events. And so we're going to slowly start rolling some things out. We were in Kansas City, in fact, last week for Washburn Wednesday, which we haven't hosted one of those in more than a year. So slowly but surely, we're going to get back to in-person events. I've met with athletics about football season next year and tailgate parties, and we're full steam ahead for what looks like hopefully a normal tailgate season and what have you. So keep watching your emails, social media, and what have you, and we'll be in touch as we start rolling some of these things out and announcing dates for upcoming events. But this actually concludes our 2020-21 Wake Up with Washburn lecture series. As I mentioned, we host 4 of these lectures throughout the academic year, 2 during the fall semester and 2 in the spring semester. And Luke, we appreciate you wrapping up the season for us in a great fashion. It was a terrific topic and discussion today, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to visit with all of us. So I, again, appreciate everybody tuning in, and thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you. Bye.